You're winning. You're winning. You're winning. You're winning. You are winning with another episode of Epic Understanding. I am so pleased to be here with you tonight. I have a very special guest, a man he's not even off tour. He is in the middle of a tour. He's flying out to Hawaii later on this week, and he's touring with Will Downey. I have a maestro, a master here with me. He is simply full of wisdom and a pleasure to talk to. He is going to give us a master class tonight, not just about music, but about life. Mr. Mark A. Walker. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hi, Coach Love. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I am just pleased. How would they say pleased as punch? To have you. You know what, our conversation backstage was on fire because I started telling you some of this conversation that was happening on Twitter, right?
Yes.
And they were just popped right off talking about the fact that your mom was a pastor.
Well, I think a lot of people, we all live by a certain belief system based upon what we believe, what we interpret. I always often tell people that God put people in places where where they're needed, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it isn't a traditional way of doing things. And sometimes we want to stick God in a box and say, "Well, this is what we thought it meant when He said this. This is what we thought it meant when this was written." I say, "Yeah, but God said He will never leave or forsake you." So He
Mm-hmm.
always had people in place uh, to be a blessing, to be an uplift, because a lot of us aren't in privileged places to get the help. So sometimes God puts people in places to help people, and that's basically the bottom line when you see people in ministry.
Absolutely. I like what you said to me. You told me that wisdom herself is referred to as a female, and she was there with God before man and woman were created. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, I mean, if you read, I mean, a lot of people don't have a different interpretation, but there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, we've heard that several times, but just to read the whole, take a chance and I just say read the whole chapter of Proverbs, the eighth chapter of Proverbs,
The eighth
You co-
chapter of
the eighth
Proverbs.
chapter of Proverbs, and then you come up with the concept of what we did because there's nothing new under the sun.
Uh
And I
huh.
think that a lot of times people will have their own philosophies, and that's fine. I mean, your belief system is your belief system, but I always say this: if you're wrong, God will correct you. We don't have
Okay.
to have, you know, debates and all that because I'm like this. I'm too busy to sit around and have debates. People I know that's doing what I do. I'm a musician in church as well as I play with Will Downing as well as Richard Smallwood.
Uh
I
huh.
don't even have time to debate because the scripture even talks about the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. And so I don't understand how labor can sit around with other laborers and debate about anything. And if you have
Wow.
the time to do that, then I mean, obviously you ain't doing real ministry because there's too many people that need help. But that's just once again, that's my interpretation. You
Hmm.
maybe you do have 3 or 4 days out of the week to debate about stuff, and what does it ends up being about is what you write or you feel that you're right. You haven't
Hmm.
won anybody over. How about you work together and we wouldn't be having this conversation if we were all doing our jobs.
Mm. You want to know what? I think that mindset comes out of the fiery conversation that's going on these days. And it's really coming from a good place. And the reason why I say it's coming from a good place is that people are trying to define and redefine their roles. You know, long ago, well, really not too long ago, a man's value purely came from his ability to provide and his ability to protect. Basically, meaning being able to die for his family. And now men are being asked and required to have a degree of emotional intelligence to get the same level of respect that men received a generation ago without having that. And so, or not being required to have that, I would say. And now people are just really pushing for role definition. What do you think?
Well, I think everything's done on the ideal of that century or that group of people, or what their expectations are versus their wants.
Mm-hmm.
And some things can sound good, but
Mm-hmm.
then I always say you got to be within reason of the individual because everybody's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
So you have somebody who studied to be a doctor, and so the knowledge of a doctor is supposed to surpass the average man because
Okay.
he's a doctor. Because that's the way we put the doctors on a certain pedestal, and it's by right. But you have somebody, no offense, whether they have a job that doesn't require that much schooling or education, you view them totally different. But the responsibility of a man in general is to protect his family mentally, as
Mm-hmm.
well as be somewhat of a provider, according to the living, once again, the living arrangements of both male and female, what they agreed upon. Um, and once again, everything else to me is opinion because everybody's needs isn't the same. You get some people, they want the single family home right out the gate. They want to live in a certain area. And some people are fine with starting off in an apartment or a condo. And some people be fine with being in a townhouse for the rest of their life. But it's
Mm-hmm.
still individual what the individual wants. And a lot of times we'll watch TV, we'll watch the videos, we'll watch people that we really look up to or admire and want to match some of the lifestyles with ours. And it's just not reasonable or realistic because you don't know who the individuals are in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes somebody grew up and they just maybe they just wanted companionship,
Mm-hmm.
or one person just wanted just to have a good family and didn't have these high expectations that are now being presented as the norm. And so it's still, it's like anything else. The kid who goes to school with a no-name pair of shoes versus having the Air Jordans or any other, you're kind of mentally pushed into a place that you really don't want to be, but you don't want to look like you're not, as they say, being successful.
Mm. I listened to what you said, and I noticed that you said mentally and physically to protect, mentally and physically. And in order to protect someone mentally, that means you have to be mentally responsible.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think the reinforcements. What I meant by that is growing up as a child. I'm not saying people don't do it today, but I knew back in my day. I'm 55 years old, so back in my day, things were a little different. Where the parent would say, you can do whatever you want to do, but you have to apply yourself. Um, you're not gonna always be in this state if you're just in a bad place. You're upset about something. You're not always be in this place. You eventually get over these things, but know that you're gonna have
Okay.
good days and bad days. Also realize that there are some things that's gonna come your way that weren't your fault. Um, we call them disasters, we call them life, but things that
Mhm.
happen and it would appear to be unfair, but once you get through it, you'll get through it, proving that
Okay.
you can get through hard times, proving that you can get through things. And it's sad to say it, but I have to say it. You have people who are incarcerated who
Mm.
didn't commit the crime. You
Right.
have people who've been accused of things and they didn't do it. And some things are hard to get over than others, but some get over it. And these are examples we use, like, no, they didn't do it. And some of these things may happen to you. You may not go to jail, but you'll get accused of something that you didn't do. You'll get accused of something you didn't say.
Mhm.
A
Mhm.
part of life. And when people get to know you as a person, they realize, oh, no, that was a lie. Coach Love isn't like that. Coach Love's a very nice person. She's very compassionate. She's not mean or nasty. You know what I mean? Versus
Mhm.
leaving
Mhm.
off the opinion of others, because that's what we kind of like gauge. Can gauge. Some of us can gauge life like that. Opinion of somebody else's marriage, somebody else's relationship, somebody else's career.
Mhm. Mhm. I think that one of the biggest things that you have to learn, um, if you're going to be successful, you cannot see yourself through everyone else's eyes. You know, you have to stay your course. It doesn't mean you need to be don't be arrogant. Don't not listen, but there are people who actively feel like it's their job to tear you down, to hold you back. And you can't let that be. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think everybody has to deal with something. Everybody's dealing with something mentally, or and I have a concept about that. I'll explain that why a little later. But everybody's kind of dealing with something. You know, some things we don't want to talk about. Some things we can't share. Some things could be embarrassment. Some things could just be shameful. And you have people, you know, they're bullies. I mean, by nature, they're bullies.
Mhm,
And uh, I went to a class about a couple of months ago. I was invited to do the session at a college in Texas, and was going to do a recording. And I was in a room full of young musicians. And the first thing I shared with them was how great they were. And they're looking at me like, "What? You play with Richard Smallwood? You play with Will Downing? You've done all these records?" And I had to share with them, I don't read music. And they were just
oh,
like,
wow.
no, they were all shocked. You know, the look on their face was like, huh? I said, so you're already smarter than I am. So you already have the education to do what I'm doing, because you already can read. I can't read. I read. Of course, I know my notes, and I
Mhm,
can play. You know, if I wanted to do, as they say, a cheat sheet or chord chart, I can write out the notes on the chart. But I don't read notation, which is different.
mhm, mhm,
And to encourage has been something that we've lacked in our communities. Um, you know, in your church, local churches, it's been we've been in a real selfish generation where things about getting what they can get, and the only way you can get to the top is turning other people down. I mean, I see it in ministry all the time where one preacher's, you know, getting famous by bashing another preacher. How come you can't get famous by just preaching the gospel? How come you can't build your church by doing what the other guys are doing versus trying to get a group of people who hate on another ministry to join you, and you build your ministry through hatred, and you want to say God sent you to set up a ministry? I don't understand that. Now, if you're telling me there are things that just completely wrong, somebody's teaching it's okay to kill, steal, and destroy, yeah, then yeah, you preach on the things that are wrong. But I've seen too much targeted hatred towards certain ministries to certain people. And you know, once you've said it once, man, just let it go. Why are you still 3 4 years later speaking on the same thing, and your ministry is even being built on anything other than you're a basher? But then again, that's my opinion. And if you tell me God told you to do it, then I'll keep my mouth shut.
You know what? I'm real sure that God did not tell another minister to go over there and hate on a different minister, but the way that some things operate in different pulpits, you would think it was different, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, once again, if there's something real bad that's happened, you know, in society, and we've seen something that just needs to be addressed, then yeah, of course we address it. But I think addressing and having years and months and multiple clips of you bashing one person over one thing, and you know, we all are the same. We all sit home. We figure out what's right and what's wrong. You got some people who follow people, whether they have, I don't know. I just it almost feel like they hypnotize some of these people, and I get it, you know. But it's not
Mm.
your job to keep bashing, because bashing has never done anything but,
Mhm.
you know, repel. You know, people kind of like just back up off of you, or won't have anything to do with you. But I think if you show the love and kindness and respect that you would like if you were in the wrong, maybe you could win them over. But those are just little simple things. But I say all to say that that's the generation that we live in. We live in a
Mhm.
generation of, you know, we see it in sports. You know, this guy's no good. How did they make the Hall of Fame? Or how did this person get a job on TV, on the internet, or on the network? You know, these things are just, it's common. It's common practice.
Very much so. So, what would your mother say? I'm just curious. What have you seen your mom say when people challenged her for being a female pastor?
Well, it's interesting. She's not pastoring anymore,
Okay.
but she did pastor for quite a few
When you were
years.
when you were growing up.
Yeah, when I was growing up, yeah, when I was growing up, she's not pastoring anymore. She still ministers. The problem has always been that you have people who are set out to bring attention to themselves.
Okay.
And if there's something in scripture and it seems like you're going against it, uh, this is the I live by this rule. Are they doing more good than evil?
Hmm.
Are they helping, or are they destroying? And
Mhm.
in the day that I was growing up, there were a lot of women. I'm not saying that there still aren't, but back in the day, there were a lot of women who were misunderstood, who were put down, who were being treated less than a foreigner, and I'll just leave it at that. Who
Mhm.
needed to be built up, who were literally dying spiritually,
Mhm.
and I don't think people understand what it's like to go somewhere and not feel like you have value as a person when, especially when you serve, especially when we talking about church now. You got women who served in the church, and let's be realistic. There, especially back then, even now, there were more women in the church than there were men. There
Yeah.
were more dedicated women in the church than there were men. As a matter of fact, um, some of the greatest services that I've been a part of, as well as even seen, as far as documented, not hearing somebody else's story, whether it's
Mhm.
from, I've heard it 1,000 times about Azusa, but I wasn't born, so I can't tell you anything about Azusa. I can
Oh,
only repeat what somebody else said. Some of the greatest things that I ever saw, and I'm just saying some, was Women Thou Art Loose conference, and there were
oh
female
yeah.
preachers preaching.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about on a worldwide impact for the African
Mhm.
American community. That was one of the greatest moves of God that I've ever seen on the
Mhm.
worldwide. And I'm talking about that I seen with my own eyes, not
Right.
somebody
Right.
else's testimony, not somebody else's, oh, it was like that, because I can only tell you about what I saw and what I felt. So we devalued the women, and my mother was put in a place to be a blessing in ministry.
Okay. Okay.
And back then, men wasn't as soft spoken
Okay.
when they come out right, just blatantly disrespecting folks over the pulpit. And it was almost tolerated to deal with it. So, but when you start realizing that when you were calling people such as my mother, she wasn't the only female preacher, of course, in the 70s and 80s. Um, they start realizing that women had great value to the church as
Mhm.
well as to the community. So here you go, you're fighting against something that you think you understood. You fail to realize what God has said in Old and New Testament about pouring his spirit out. And
Okay.
people will debate about that. But then you look at, once again, the Bible was written by the men that God inspired to write. God didn't write the Bible, but he inspired men to write the Bible. And there's scriptures in the Bible about, not taking words away, or the place of Egypt. Just like it's so many other scriptures that talked about. You could see that God saying, do what I tell you to do, or there's punishment behind it. Well, if you knew for a fact, God knew for a fact that men wouldn't misinterpret things or do things to benefit themselves, he never would have put punishment behind them about not taking out words, not misinterpreting certain things, because it was important for everybody to get what he wanted them to hear. But once again, this is all about opinion, because theology is theory. Theory is an opinion.
Mm.
So I mean, and once again, you read the Gospels. Sometimes when I was a child and I read the Gospel, and of course I had to learn how to read. And initially, well, these four guys, these are the four scriptures that's preached on the Gospel of Jesus. How come some of the events seem like they were in different places, or they were in different views of it, and it was just a view of the individual that wrote it, and they
Mhm.
gave great, perfect. And what I'm saying is, and I'm talking about the Gospel, it's great Gospels. They were great interpretations. They were great uh, outlooks of what was going on, but there was still their view of what happened. It wasn't that it was wrong. They were all correctly right. It was four views, and sometimes you can read this. I say all to say you can read the scripture and get something totally different from the next person, and doesn't mean that either one are wrong, but that's your perspective.
Right.
And if it was, as they would say, a demonized situation, God's gonna correct it. Which is why
God
when
will
I don't
correct.
get in debates with people about, we want to sit down. I don't have time to sit down with you. Don't text me. Don't even send me no emails. I'm doing too much to sit around because you ain't got a life. I have a life. I'm doing too much.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm just being realistic, because people like to feel like that they're right, or they're trying to live by somebody else's lifestyle, somebody else's opinion. And we've all done that. I mean, I grew up believing in certain preachers, so I wanted to live by their beliefs. But when I started finding out God for myself, certain things I couldn't hold on to anymore, because that wasn't how I saw it, and that definitely wasn't uh, the way God gave it to me. So, and I still believe them, still hold value to the things I grew up believing. Um, a lot of the things, but to some of the things, no, because I believe that God needs universal. I think it was T.D. Jakes that said it. Universal. You need universal people who can go into any place and be a blessing, and go into any place and speak to anybody. And some of us just don't have that ability.
Mhm. That is beautifully put. Now, do I have permission to play this? Um, this song by you? Because I think when the moment I heard it, it just spoke to my soul.
Sure, of
Thank
course.
you. Thank you so much. Gosh, I'm sorry.
So,
I had to turn me down to turn that up so it didn't echo for everyone. But it is hypnotic. Tell me about that.
Mr. Jeff Adams on keyboards, the light skinned
Okay.
guy on keyboards, and Rick Massey was the other keyboard player, and Marcus Turner was on drums. Mar- Jeff Adams brought this song to life, and we kind of added to it. So yeah, it's really Jeff. Jeff put
Oh,
gave us an
Jeff
incredible
Adams.
concept.
I
Yeah,
mean, that
yeah,
is
yeah,
a
Jeff. And then
woo.
we added what we wanted to add to it. But yeah, we had a great time. It was improv. Believe it or not, that was
What?
improv. Yeah, that was improv because we
Wow.
needed to come up with a concept video for um, one of the endorsements companies that I have. You see right behind me, Orange Company,
Okay.
Orange bass amps, and that was one of the songs for the concept video. Yeah,
You know what? I got the memo to wear orange today.
I see, I
Big
see.
ups, big ups.
Yeah, but it was an original tune. We yeah, we had a good time. We put it together that quick. Yeah,
Man, that is just, you know how you hear something, you just like, oh yeah,
yeah.
that is it. That is it. I mean, it was just grooving. And so I feel like that's how your wisdom is. It just kind of pours out of you. Um, it might be impromptu, but it is so deeply rooted and rich in you that whatever you speak on, you're going to add something special to it.
And I think we all come with something spontaneous, and I've just been blessed when God gives it to me.
Mhm, mhm. When we were chatting, you told me that music is your passion, but really mentoring is what you feel like you were born to do. Tell me about that.
Well, growing up, and of course, you know, I told you my background. I won't go into the church thing too much, but I grown up, and one thing that I realized is that we didn't have a lot of people who uh, poured real knowledge. And what I mean by that, being realistic about life in general. Some
Mhm.
things you had to find out uh, on the spot, you know, versus somebody just giving you heads up. I didn't get a lot of heads up
Okay.
in things, especially in music, in church, and trying to balance life because you know I grew up in an era where you couldn't play certain genres of music. It was considered to be wrong to play anything other than gospel music in your house. And if I wanted to listen to something else, it had to be outside the house. That's just the way we grew up believing.
Okay. Okay.
And I respect it till the day that you live by the concept with God, whatever God's giving you, that's your conscience. Um, I felt totally different because I felt like I did more good outside the realms of the four walls than inside the realms of four walls. So I find myself talking to musicians when they would ask me, well, how could you play this? How could you play this? How does that affect your life? Well, me and God's been cool. I think if this was wrong, he would have stopped me. He would have sent signs. But I think, um, and I say this very gently, but with compassion, I think you always teach your children the best that you know and by
Right.
what you believe by, and that's fine. Because
Mm-hmm.
my children, you know, they found out things and they're teaching me.
Okay.
It was just based upon what I believe. Of course, I wanted to honor my mother and my father. Um,
Mm-hmm.
want to honor both of them. So you live by those rules. But then I realized that I had to be realistic with folks and say, no, you're not going to die if you play R&B, if you play jazz. But we have our limits. You should know where your limit is. You should know what takes you away from being you.
Okay.
If you haven't been called to go to certain things, I don't drink, so I don't have a problem. I can walk into a bar, order food, and go. It's not going to bother me. I don't have.
Right.
I've never struggled with that. Now I have asthma. I don't want to be around smokers, but I can go into a room with somebody smoke. It's not going to entice me to want to smoke.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I know my limitations, so I teach that. It's like, hey, and there were certain rooms that I got into as far as like playing with different artists where I had to have that small God conversation where people want to know questions about, hey man, how do you feel about this without going to the church? Because they go to church, they feel like they're being bashed or looked upon a certain way. It's like even some of us in church, a lot of them still have a lot of things to work out. So you deal with a lot of insecurities because people want to feel like they're above you. So that's what you're dealing with. But long story short, we all struggle with something. We're all dealing with something. Um, there's different levels of it, but everybody's dealing with something. And you have a voice and a platform to be a blessing to other people. That's why God put you there. I think you get on stage, you say, hey, you enjoy the night? Hey, I just thank God for me being here. Y'all keep a prayer out for me. There's any form of goodness that's shared throughout the night on that stage, showing and letting people know God loves them, say a prayer, take care of yourself. These little small nuggets go a long way because some of those people you perform in front of may not ever get a good word, may not even go to church. But because you stood there and said that, that is their light and their goodness for the day. And who knows that may lead them to go to a church, may lead them to go to a ministry, or you maybe start watching it more and more and get a greater understanding of what's going on with them in their life. But it
Mm-hmm.
has to be start with something, some small nugget push, something to get them. Hey, yeah, we're all dealing with. Hey, man, I had to tell somebody not too long ago, and I'll share this with Coach Love. The beginning of the pandemic, I
Okay.
had a series of small mini strokes,
Oh wow.
and it was hard to never talked about. It took me a year to even talk about it because I was in denial. You can be in denial about stuff even when it happens to you.
Right.
MRIs, and I say MRIs more than one. Several
Okay.
showed that yeah, they were damaged to me, and I had damage in the brain. Little lesion, whatever. Uh, Worked it out, and I talked to other people, talked on the program, and it started helping others to deal with it. You can overcome some of these things. They were baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we overcome by the testimony. That's in scripture.
Amen.
I think that people to fail to realize that there are power in words. Life and death is in the power of the tongue. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
those who live by it, if you talk a lot, there are consequences to everything you do. But you
Mm-hmm.
speak positive things, so there are positive things can come your way if you just start speaking positive. These things just wasn't drilled in me as a child when things weren't looking good, when it didn't look like I'm not supposed to be playing with no Richard Smallwood. I don't read music because if you're playing with orchestras, you're supposed to read music. That's what
Mm-hmm.
those are the rules. Like Bible, if you're a minister, you're supposed to go to these classes. But sometimes your ministry started before you even knew it was going to happen because you were already being a blessing to other people. Maybe your
Right.
ministry is feeding people. Maybe your ministry is singing about the little guy. Maybe your ministry is really, babysitting and helping people who have issues with children because you're good with children. You're good with talking to folks. There's other things that are bigger than just standing in a pulpit and sitting on the sideline waiting for your week to preach. There's so many other aspects of being a blessing to people. And I say, I mean, even singing love songs. I joke with Will Down about it, but it feels good to be in the audience and see him sing love songs and see people fall in love again. Those things,
Wow.
are a blessing.
You know
But
what? I
people,
want to. I want to. I want to take a step back based off of something you said because you have mentioned at least three times, maybe more, that you cannot read music, but you play for and with and in front of tremendous crowds and with some of the tops and best in the business, you know, Lalah Hathaway, Gerald Albright, Richard Smallwood, Yolanda Adams. These are giants, okay? And you can't read music, but you can keep up. you know, and from what I understand, you can also lead the way.
Yeah, got a little project out, got a little single out. Yeah. Well, it comes with the territory. It came with the territory of.
So
I,
what I want to ask, what I want to find out is how did you get the opportunity to show what you can actually do? Because I think that's where the struggle is, is that there there are circumstances and there are things out there that people want to go for, but they say to themselves, "Oh, I can't do that because I don't have XYZ. I didn't go to this school. I did not graduate. I don't have whatever form of doubt, lack that, you know, refers to what they feel is their shortcoming." How did you get the opportunity?
to have friends, you must show yourself friendly. I would. Um, I played a lot of small concerts, a lot of unpaid, I should say unpaid, very unpaid situations, whether it be church or of events. And I made friends with musicians. I
Mm.
remember, one distinctive thing was in '91, going to Howard, just hanging out at the Howard University, like a piano lab rehearsal room with some musicians. I got a call just to hang out with some guys and went down there and played. I met a gentleman by the name of Chris Dave, Chris Daddy Dave, who's a drummer. People know him for playing with Mint Condition. I'm sure you've heard of Mint Condition.
Ooh.
But he grew up in Houston, so he knew Yolanda Adams. And so it was just one of those things. Hey, man, Yolanda's coming to town. And he introduced me to Raymond Angry, who was a piano player who's played with Queen Latifah, all the Roots. I mean, he's one of the great musicians of our time right now. And so he invited me to play. And
Mm.
so people saw me play with Yolanda. Of course, I've been in DC back in DC for a little while, playing in church, playing all the events. But one thing led to the next. People saw me play with Yolanda. They saw the TV specials. They saw me play. Um, he also put the band together for this group called Shy, who came out of Howard University. Yeah, so I was in that band. Um, toured with them. My god brother, who was playing keyboards for Stevie Wonder, had stopped playing with Stevie. He was working with Gerald Albright and Lalah.
Okay.
And he invited me out to California. He said, "Man, let's finish up your demo," because we had started the demo when he was living in Atlanta, and I never finished it. So we went out there, and Gerald Albright's manager came in the room, in the recording room. We were at was it LA Air Studio, Air LA Studios, I believe that's what it was called in North Hollywood.
Hmm.
And he just offered me the job. He's like, "Hey,
Wow.
uh, Gerald and Lalah are doing Arsenio Hall next week. Are you available?" So my first my first event with both of them was on Arsenio Hall, which is actually on
Wow.
YouTube. So now I go back every now and then. I look at the YouTube clip of Joel Albright and Layla's. I think it was "I Surrender." I believe that was his current single at the time.
I feel
And
like I'm gonna go look that up tonight.
yeah, and it was great. It was my first time playing, and then from there we went to San Francisco. He was on tour, so we were touring. And then one thing led to the next. I came home for. I think I came home for about somewhere in '95. I think it was for a couple of weeks, and my phone rang, and it's Richard Smallwood. I thought it was a joke. I'm picking the phone. I'm like, "Yeah, right." And he says he's put this group together called Vision. And of course, I knew some of the singers in Vision, so I just assumed, one of the singers, and it was Ken had told him because I'd seen me one time before, but I was part of Vision, and it just things just like just steamrolled after that. Kenny Lattimore, uh, we were
Wow.
in a gospel group here together in Washington D.C. So of course, Kenny, we were close friends, good friends,
Wow.
and he asked me to do his first tour, so I did the first tour. So and then went back to Joe and Layla. And Richard, it's been the same. Then I met Will Downing through Gerald Albright.
Okay.
20 was going on 21 years ago. So I've been
Wow.
with Will since then. Um,
Does he have a close little knit group? You know, Will Downing there. Is it a close knit group?
it really is. It's a family oriented situation with Will. He's crazy. He's fun, but he's a good guy. He really looks after his people. Always have, no matter what it is. And when I mean go to him, I get a lot of times I'll just you know bug him about advice about little things because I know he's still dealing with the industry at a certain level than I am. And thank God for the nuggets. And of course, I picked his ear like I picked Gerald Albright's, but Will has barely been. The last 20 years has been a joy because he gives me the honest answers, not the superficial answers. Some
Okay.
answers we can't give online, like right now. But
Right.
but he gives you, and it's realistic because I think that's the other thing I share with people who want to get in the industry is that it's good to have multiple streams of income. For
Mm-hmm.
two reasons you don't want, because things in music are not just fickle. Sometimes your mindset, your mind can go somewhere else, and sometimes you're not into it the way you were when you first got into it. You don't have that excitement and joy because you
Mm-hmm.
burnt yourself out, and it's easy to burn yourself out, which I think a lot of people don't understand or even see why you want to see why this artist isn't doing this, why is this artist now doing TV shows, why? Because you can burn yourself out.
Right.
It's not always about the money. Sometimes it is, but sometimes you can burn yourself out. And there's nothing like singing or playing music when you're not in love with it anymore.
You know, and because it is it has to come from passion. You know, it has to come from passion. It's an art.
Oh yeah, and people can tell because you can look and see. Uh, and I pray for all of our artists, no matter what genre of music they're in, that depression still in some some of us still rule because there's issues that
Mm.
we can go on stage and we can mask it, and it does the feeding off the crowd, the energy, and the songs get you to a certain point. And I mean, I use biblical references when I'm talking to musicians because they want to know why. I said, well, go back and look at David. Why David had to keep First Samuel, 16th chapter. Why he had to keep going back to Saul and play those evil spirits off of.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he was three things happened, he was made well, evil spirits left, and he was strengthened. I said, but it came back,
Right. That-
and you got to deal with what's going on with you because sometimes it's easy as a musician and singer. You can mask your problems for years because the music does help. It is one of the greatest medicines that help with depression and anything else mentally going on with you because it puts you in another place.
Right. It does. It takes you away. Before we go to this next part where we're talking about how music does help with the depression and how artists sometimes use that, I do want to point this out because you said that um, you just took advantage of opportunities. And what I got out of that is if you can do it, then show up and do it. You know, basically, I often tell people as a career coach that, they talk about they want to switch careers and, you know, or um, I get physicians that want to stop practicing medicine directly and they want to get into management or and administration. And the best way to do that is to start or organizing small teams when they, ask to pull people together or to have volunteers for something. Be the person that pulls that together. In your situation, you could not read music, but you can play music. So if you can do it, show up and do it.
Agreed. Yes.
There you go. So I love that. I love what you're doing. And now I want to move into this idea of burnout because even though you are doing something that is fun and delightful and that so many people seek to do, it doesn't mean that you can't experience burnout. Let's talk about it.
Well, here in Washington D.C., there's a band called Spur of the Moment.
Mm.
Wayne Bruce is the band leader, band director, and we were, and I'm saying works, I don't think we're doing it anymore. We were the house band for the Capitol Jazz Cruise. We which
Mhm.
went out every year. We go out for 7, 8 days, and on that ship that week, we may have played with anywhere from 6 to 10 artists
Mhm.
musically, learning a lot of music, having fun doing it. But you can reach a point when you're playing with these artists, playing with certain artists that things, even with the artists, and I'm just gonna be realistic with you, Coach, that some come with drama, some come with because they're not happy in life,
Mhm.
and and it sounds like I'm a defend them at the same time, is that they didn't have anyone in their life to correct them or pull them up on their people skills.
Mhm. Okay, okay.
And so and I've got to set it up that way because if you're dealing with people who are dealing with issues and you're already tired, that brings more burden to you because then you're nitpicking about little things that aren't necessarily going to cost the show, which means it's not going to make the show look bad because we didn't have time to write out a certain chart for one of the horn part in the song
Okay.
because because they forgot to submit the music in time, and here we are. We're about to go on stage, literally, and I say literally 90 minutes, and they want certain things to be done. We can't, but we stress out over it. We go over it, and by the end of the week, you're literally like, I don't want to do this. I'm just tired. I'm tired of dealing with.
Mm.
It was literally 100 songs to learn that week, and then you're dealing with people with bad attitudes. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
and it's not about the money because the money can be spent. And when I tell everybody, money can be spent at any given time. So stop tripping over the money. You can make money anywhere. People hit the lottery every day. So stop tripping over the money. You want to enjoy yourself and you want it to be a lifetime experience that you can go back and say you enjoy doing it. But when you start having too many of those experiences where you say, I wish I had not done that. I wish I had not played for these people. I wish I had not, and I have. I wish I had not played this recording with this artist. I wish I had not gone
Mm.
on tour with this artist because it wasn't fun. It wasn't a good time because it was real work, and I had to even stop using the word play. I'm playing because when you hear the word play, as my big brother Stephen Ford would say, when people hear words play, it automatically puts them in a different place. They don't view it as work. But you got
Okay.
some artists, you can't make a mistake. Some artists have fired musicians that night because they didn't play a song wrong, didn't play a song right, or they missed a few chords throughout the night, and that happens a lot. Those are high pressure situations, and that's not the normal job because you're not pressured like that every day. If you make a mistake, you're gonna get fired. But these are the situations that come. Once again, this all leads up to the burnout. Feeling like, okay, if I don't play it right, they may fire me. So now you're on stage. You're not even thinking about playing good music. You're worrying about if you're gonna make a mistake and if you're gonna get fired. So you're already projecting what's going to happen before it happens. So you
Mhm.
have all of these anxiety things going on in your head while you're playing music, while you're playing the show, and then and you got to look like you're into the show. You got to look
Mm.
like you like the music you're playing. Sometimes, and every musician have experienced it. If you haven't, trust me, you will. You're playing music you just don't like. You're playing music you're just not into. It doesn't do anything for you. I mean, I'm like I said, I'm a very real person. Which I mean, I'm sure if Will is watching, he's probably laughing right now. Don't ask me if I like this certain song. I'm gonna tell you, nah, I don't like that song, but I'm gonna play it. No, I don't. It don't do nothing. It's not going anywhere. Now we'll try to make it go somewhere, but right now the way you presented it, mm-mm.
Oh, you
No,
said,
because it's like trying to feed a 3-year-old broccoli. You know what I mean?
okay. It's
It's
not
not right
happening,
now.
Captain.
It's not happening right now, and I'll do that reference because when you're playing music that you really can get into and you really like and you connect with,
Mhm.
those are the musicians you want to keep in your band. Those are
Okay.
the people you want to keep around you. Because no matter what you going through, you're gonna get through the night. No matter what you're going through, because that joy and push, you'll feel it. And sometimes the spiritual side of music, no matter what genre you playing, it can't be explained. It lifts the person who's out front up. Sometimes like they just stop what they're doing, turn around and shake their heads like, yo, this is feeling so good. This is feeling so good because that support they're riding that wave. I always say you kind of like put that wave up so he can get on that surfboard and just ride a wave as long as he wants to. Because these are moments that are not guaranteed every night because each night the music's going to be different because the crowd is different, the energy is
Right.
different, and then you are
Right.
different.
Mhm. Mhm. You know what? If I was to tell someone, I don't know, a trick of the trade to do for yourself to lift yourself up, sing to yourself. I sing to myself. I sing to my mother. My mother has an illness, but I sing to her every day. I wake her up with singing every day,
That's wonderful.
you know, because it just brings joy to the soul. And if you can get the person to sing back to you, that harmony lifts you up in a way like no other. You know, it's like um, it's like hugging your spirit.
Yes.
That's what it's like for me. I want to talk about your uh, latest project, you know, and how that began to speak to you. It is right here, Duke Stroll. Tell me about Duke Stroll.
Well, Duke Stroll is a song dedicated to the late, great George Duke.
Okay,
I've
now.
had a pleasure of working with him a few times, a few as in maybe about 5 or 6 times.
Uh-huh.
Some of the performances on YouTube. Once again, we were on the Capitol Jazz crew, so Mr. Wayne Bruce put a lot of that stuff together.
Okay.
So him and Wayne Bruce were good friends. So
Okay.
being able to play with George, you learn a lot. You pick his brain to, little moments where we had together, where we rehearsal, we had a break or whatever, and hey, Mr. Duke, what was it like to work with this person? What was your concept when you was doing this? Or you're just asking the questions that just to see how they think and how it goes. And he was great at just being realistic about everything.
Okay.
And Mike Upshaw,
Okay.
the producer, along with, of course, Chris Big Dog Davis was the producer. Mike was co-producer. Mike presented the song. Um, as we sat down and we figured some stuff out, and we got Mr. Philip Lassiter, who's everybody know Phillips from playing with Prince, been in
Yeah.
Prince band for so many years, all the Grammy nominations, Grammy awards that he's a part of. Uh, it came together wonderful. I mean, Mike Upshaw, once again, we're like a team. The guy
Uh,
brings an idea, we all kind of like uh, stack the ideas. Of course, Mr. Chris Big Dog Davis, he's like the Grammy nominated producer. That's just the best, one of the best, I should say, one of the best producers on the planet in my eyes. Big
wow.
brother, yeah, he's an incredible person, and it's gone so well to where, yeah, we're still working on some other music right now as we speak.
Okay. Um, you know, can I say maybe there'll be an EP out at some point?
You know what? Yes, yes, and we are. You should hear about that in the next couple of weeks. We'll give you the release date, a bit
Okay.
of information. Oh,
Okay.
we're working. Like I said, we are working night and day. Of course not. Next week I'm gonna be off because I'm leaving for Hawaii on Wednesday. But
Yes, the Hawaii trip.
Will Downing at the Blue Note in Honolulu.
Yes,
Yeah.
you
So once
know,
I get back from that Hawaii and San Francisco trip, I'll be home and we'll be finishing up the rest of the music.
wait a minute. Is your family going on that trip? It's like, hey,
Believe it or not, they're surprising. My should say my wife and youngest daughter are actually going to meet me out there for a couple of days. They
yes,
can't they can't stay the
yes.
whole time because it's school time. We're at school, we're doing school time, but they just
Right.
told me that the other. Well, she claimed she told me before, but no, I didn't see the tickets. But yeah, they're gonna meet me out. They're gonna meet me out there for a couple of
You know
days.
what?
And,
Hachu, I think your daughter has the Honolulu feet. Hachu. Hachu.
well, they were gonna miss this trip, and the thing was with the Honolulu trip with Mr. Downing, Honolulu trip, it had been pushed back several years. So we were supposed to go the year of COVID. So
Right.
this was really a makeup date. I've been trying to go here for the last 2 years. So, and it's one of
Listen,
my favorite vacation places to go. So,
yeah, listen, that's some good work right there.
yeah,
You-
I
I
get a day
think,
off. I get a day and a half off. So, it's going. I'll make the most of it for sure.
you know what? I know you're gonna have some good eats and some nice treats. That's what I know. When you go to Hawaii, get the sand in between your toes and just the whole atmosphere,
Yeah,
of Hawaii. And they had low incidence of COVID
yeah,
as
very
well,
low. Yeah,
you know. One of the things I like about, they like their when they wait in line, they just put their shoes in line and go sit
yeah.
down.
Laid
I
back
mean,
place. Yeah, very laid back place.
yeah, very laid back. It's just it's wonderful. So it's truly a good thing. All right. So we've explored a lot of things, and we've explored the idea of burnout. There recently was an article written, and you're a man with a family, so you don't necessarily have this in your heart, but they're talking about how men are experiencing deep loneliness. You know, uh, men in their 50s and 60s, or just single in general, because they did have a part of it as younger men as well. They're experiencing deep loneliness. You're shaking your head.
Yeah, I
What?
have a few friends. Yeah, I have a few friends
Yeah,
that
yeah.
dealt with this, and I think at the end of the day, it goes back to part of the early conversation where there was an expectation for men, but the other side wasn't really expected. There wasn't really no expectation. Just sometimes in general, just them being there was supposed to be enough,
Mhm.
or not just being real. I'm a realistic person, or just the sex was just supposed to be enough,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it wasn't because there are other aspects that men just don't talk about. Because it's not famous to talk about it. It's not the common thing to talk about. I think one of the biggest concerns that I've had with, and I have a lot of single friends now who've talked about it, they haven't felt that they were truly loved, that they
Mhm.
were the best option to have because they were either going to be a great provider, they were either the good guy who's good at forgiving and overlook things, good with children, good with dealing with people, other people's family members, and the issues sometimes that come along with being married to people because you got to deal with the family, and sometimes you got certain family members who are, I say, untamed and kind of wreak havoc in everybody else's relationships, and a lot of men had to deal with that. And because you're talking about people's family members, of course, that's a touchy subject behind closed doors as well as in the open doors. That after a while, you get tired of, okay, I didn't sign up for all of this. This was supposed to be about between the two people and not all the other drama that's added. And if you're telling me this is what it takes to be in a relationship, I want out. Now,
Mm.
everybody doesn't feel that way, but I know quite a few that I've spoken to, and I can only imagine after that what it'd be like. Now, of course, it's on both sides of the fence because everybody has family, and I'm sure everybody has some type of dramatization in there. Somebody who brings drama to the table, family member who brings drama to the table. But uh, speaking to a few men that I do know, a lot of things were based upon how they really felt about being loved, how they really felt about if this was true love or was just a good situation.
Wow. I just want to hold on to that part because some of your friends express that they don't know if they've ever truly, really been loved. Mm, that is so powerful. It makes me ask the question, how would they know?
Well, I think one thing for sure, I remember being in I just finished playing, and my youngest daughter at the time, she was like 2 or 3 years old or something like that, and she came up to me, and they let her through, and security let her through, and she hugged me. She said, "Hey, Daddy, Dad, good," and she hugged me. She was good to see me. And one of the musician friends of mine said, he said, "Man, what I wouldn't give to have that." Because
Mm-hmm.
they felt like what was in the marriage was passed down to their children, that the children didn't even know how to love or treat their father or greet their father.
Mm-hmm.
It had never happened. Those type of things just wasn't the norm.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized was, he said, "Man, every time your daughter see you or your children see you, it's like they haven't seen you in months. And it's like they really love being around you." And I'm just, I want to not say jealousy, it was just always, it was a good envy.
Mm-hmm.
What they enjoy, and of course, I know some of my friends who didn't have daughters. It was different, but my sons were the same way when they were younger. Um, I think sometimes the personality of the house can grasp onto the children,
Mm-hmm.
and and I'm realistic. I'm not blaming anybody because I don't want anybody to send me no emails or text messages. That that if the child sees the mother or even father, no matter how it goes,
Mm-hmm.
love on each other, it kind of like passes down to the child.
Mm-hmm.
And if the child doesn't see it, child doesn't get inkling that this is the norm, then most
Mhm.
likely it's not going to do it. Now there are
Right.
some, because they would say you got, their daddy's child or their mommy's child. It just comes natural instinct. But then there's some who lead by example.
Mhm.
They only follow by example, and if they don't see the spouse or they don't see the husband or wife doing it, most likely in some cases, there are chances one of them children are going to be just like their parent and not show the love. And it does go a long way, especially when you got men. And I'm only speaking on men right now. So you asked me a question about men, that
Mhm. Oh yeah.
you're dealing with enough with society. And I'm past she's using the police brutality as an example, just in life, that things just haven't been given to the point of we're sensitive in certain areas when we
Mhm.
need the love and attention from time to time too. So it
Mhm.
feels like that this is right. Because if you never love me, or you never hug me, you never show in front of my children that you care about me, then it really, it can hurt. It can
Mhm.
hurt. Yeah, for sure.
Mhm. So I appreciate what you're saying so much. I do wonder, are women the cure for male loneliness, or is affirmation the cure from other men for male loneliness? I wonder that.
Well, my opinion, and I say this, I don't think anybody is totally responsible for your happiness. I
Mhm.
think you got to do things for yourself. You got to
Mhm.
have a form of confidence for yourself. But
Mhm.
because I still kind of live by the Bible.
Mhm.
Uh, you reap what you sow, um, but you got to be first partaker as well. And,
So,
you, and what I mean by that is you got to show the love. If you're always showing the love and you never get it back, then I think you've gotten your answer. But
right,
if you're showing the love, then primarily if you text 100 people, you're going to get a text back. And
that's
I'll leave it
true.
at that.
That's true. One of the contributors in the Epic Understanding um, is a scholar by the name of Dr. Rahim Lay. And he talks about emotional responsibility with men. Um, and he talks about empathy a lot. The reason why he says emotional responsibility versus emotional availability, he thinks it sounds better for when men talk, when you say emotionally responsible. But I think that being emotionally responsible is not the same thing as emotionally available. When you're emotionally responsible, you learn how to manage your anger. You fully communicate um, how you're feeling and why you're feeling that way, along with what you're thinking about the emotional journey. You take time to um, receive the emotions from the other person, and then figure out how the puzzle fits together. Being emotionally responsible, for me, is what people say is the work. Now, I actually enjoy it. I want to figure it out. I want to um, talk through it. Just don't yell. I'm not with the yelling. Don't yell at me. I gotta go.
Yeah.
But I just think that being emotionally responsible is a really great way to lead. So when your friends are saying that they're lonely, I wonder, have they taken on the emotional responsibility to connect with the people who love them and to connect with their male counterparts?
Well, from my experience, I only know things are partial because I always say I don't live in their house. Didn't know when they were married. I didn't live in their house. I didn't know what was really going on. Um, when I mean in the bedroom, closed doors, private conversations. I just knew them as friends. I still know them as people who are very compassionate people, which doesn't make them a good spouse. Just they're just compassionate. I think
Mhm.
I always often share that people have expectations, and sometimes you don't see the expectations until you're with them. You're with them 24/7, and sometimes you still don't see it right away. But there's inklings of signs of things of selfish people. The selfish people act the same, and eventually things end up being because I didn't get what I want. This is what's going to happen, or I can't do this because I didn't get what I want. It's like I say barter system, which isn't
Mhm.
love. But then people have their own definition of what love is,
Mhm.
because everybody's definition is different from love and compassion. So I'm very sensitive in that two people can be good friends, but not really meant to be married.
Okay.
And I think we can fall into those signs of, oh, they look good together and they all do good
Mm.
together. And it's like, no, you just had lunch.
Uh-oh.
That's all it was. And we don't, because you don't know if, and just being realistic, you don't know if you're gonna like her bad habits. Maybe he likes having the guys over the house all the time. She ain't feeling that. Or she like having her nagging cousins and aunts over the house all the time.
Not
You
nagging
don't like
cousins.
that. Yeah, I mean, and no, because you got to live with that. These are the things that are part of who they are. Because
Yeah.
it's just an extension of who they are and the things that they like or things that they deal with. And I've said this often now. Now I say it that if she can't protect her own heart, how's she gonna help protect yours? If
Mhm.
she's supposed to be your rib. If she's got people taking advantage of her, and same thing, the vice versa. If you got people taking care of, taking advantage of him, how can he protect you?
Mhm.
And you got to have a level of, okay, there's a line you can't cross because I have somebody that I'm connected to, and I can't have that in my space.
Right,
I
right.
don't. I got to protect their mental state. The
Mm.
mental state is I can't have him coming home, or can't have her coming home. There's a bunch of loudmouth people in the house when she's worked hard all day, or he's worked hard all day.
Mhm.
However you want to set it up, but somebody has to protect me, and I really believe about protecting each other. Because
Yeah.
people always talk about, that's my rib. That's not your rib if you can't protect it.
Uh-oh.
Can't protect them, a rib protects. And as
Mm-mm.
somebody told me, a bruised rib makes it hard to breathe.
Oh, that's
So you
some
got some
wisdom.
people who can't live well because the rib is bruised. I mean, and it comes out in a relationship because there's all these strains and all this stuff's going on because you have a lot of hurt people who are just too prideful to get the help.
Wow. Now
You
that's
got
some
to
good
deal with that.
stuff.
Yeah. And I've talked to people who are in their 70s, 80s who had dealt with stuff their whole life and it carried into the marriage, into their family. And people never realized that all the stuff that was going on because they never addressed the issues that happened to them when they were 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old.
Oh
Because they
boy,
were still dealing with it. And
that's
you're sitting, you can go into a relationship and trying to figure out, well, I didn't did everything right. What's going on? Something happened to them. And
mhm.
they're not ready to talk about it, but it needs to be dealt with because all you do is you bring the hurt. And Mr.
Absolutely.
William Beckton spoke a sermon about if you drink from a broken glass, you'll cut your lip.
Mhm.
So basically, in a nutshell, as much as you want to be a blessing to someone else, if you're broken, eventually that ends up hurting someone. You end up hurting someone to
Absolutely.
some degree.
And you
And
know
that's
what? That is some good stuff. I am taking that with me. Um, a a bruised rib makes it hard to breathe. That is some good stuff right there. I love it. And then you talked about, you know, still being hurt from your childhood. One of the channels that we air on, it's called ACEs Matter, and it's ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And sometimes when people are in adult arguments, they are really speaking from the point of view of that 8-year-old or 12-year-old little boy or girl. And that little boy or girl is still hurt. They're still in a fight of their life from their childhood.
I agree. I agree.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that adults need to do is they need to parent their inner child so that they can be a full adult.
I totally agree. Yep.
Yeah.
Coach Love, you're on point. I believe that. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You know what? I am so glad that you have put out this project, Duke Stroll, because that is what brought us together but you, sir, have so much wisdom that you have left us with tonight. You truly have given us a master class.
Thank you, Coach Love.
I appreciate you so much. I'm going to bend your ear for a moment behind the scenes, but we are going to bid our audience adieu. And ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you so much for hanging out with me tonight. We just have enjoyed and been blessed by Mr. Mark A. Walker. So thank you for coming tonight. And I'll simply say, bye-bye for now. You're winning. You're winning. You're winning.